And stay with me for a moment, not the kind of alone that comes from being physically by yourself, but the deeper kind. The kind where life keeps moving, people keep talking, days keep passing, and yet something inside you feels quietly abandoned. Maybe you woke up today already tired, not just tired in your body, but tired in your spirit, tired of being strong, tired of hoping, tired of praying the same prayers and wondering if they still reach heaven. Some mornings don't begin with peace, they begin with questions. God, are you still here? Did I wait too long? Did I miss what you promised me? Why does it feel so quiet when I need you most? If that sounds like you, this prayer is not an accident. There are moments in life when God feels distant, not because he has left, but because he is working in ways we cannot yet recognize. Silence can feel like absence, but silence is often the space where God is doing his deepest work. You might feel like you're standing still while everyone else moves forward, like doors closed instead of opening, like you're watching other people receive what you've been praying for, and while your own life remains paused. And the hardest part isn't the waiting itself, it's the thought that maybe the waiting means no, that maybe the promise expired, that maybe God changed his mind about you. But listen closely. God has never confused waiting with abandonment. Scripture is filled with people who waited longer than they ever imagined. Joseph waited in prison. David waited in caves. Hannah waited through tears. Even Jesus waited 30 years for a public moment that lasted only a few. Waiting has never meant forgotten. Silence has never meant absent. Still, that doesn't make mornings like this easier, because mornings are honest. At night, we distract ourselves, but in the morning before the noise begins, the ache speaks louder. This is when loneliness feels spiritual, when doubts feel heavier, when faith feels fragile, and you may wonder if you have enough strength left to believe again. Today, if you are here listening, let me gently tell you something important. You are not weak because you feel this way. You are human. And God has always met his people in moments exactly like this one. Sometimes God allows us to feel the weight of the silence, not to punish, but to teach us how to listen more deeply. Because God's work is not always loud. His presence is not always dramatic. His faithfulness is often quiet, steady, unfolding. Beneath the surface, think of a seed buried in the ground. From above, it looks like nothing is happening, but underneath, life is forming. Roots are spreading. Strength is being built where no one can see. You may feel buried, but buried is not the same as dead. This morning may feel empty, but emptiness is often the space God prepares before filling it with something new. And that is why this prayer matters. Not because it will rush God, not because it will force answers, but because it will gently realign your heart with the truth you may have forgotten. God is not silent. God is still at work, even when you don't feel him, even when the signs are unclear, even when hope feels thin. There is timing in this moment, divine timing. You did not click on this prayer randomly. You were led here quietly, intentionally, because your soul needed reassurance before the day begins. So don't rush this prayer. Don't multitask through it. Let it unfold slowly, the way healing does. You don't have to bring strong faith right now. You don't have to have the right words. You don't even have to fully understand what God is doing. You only need to be willing to stay. Stay in the presence. Stay in the breath between your worries. Stay in the truth that God sees what you cannot see yet. This prayer is for the heart that feels unseen, for the one who keeps showing up despite disappointment, for the soul that whispers, God, I'm still here, but I'm tired. And as we begin, remember this: God has not moved on without you. He has not forgotten the promises spoken over your life. He has not confused your silence with surrender. He is closer than you think, working deeper than you imagine, and moving in ways that will one day make sense. So if you feel alone this morning, pray this slowly, not to convince God to come back, but to remember that he never left. There is a sacred tension woven all through Scripture, the space between what God promises and when that promise finally unfolds. Most people love the moment of fulfillment, but very few talk about the long quiet stretch in between, and yet that is where faith is truly formed. Think about Abraham. God spoke to him clearly. Not vaguely, not symbolically. God promised him a son, a future, a legacy, but after the promise came silence, years of ordinary mornings, years of growing older, years of wondering if the voice he heard was real or just hope. Speaking too loudly, day after day, Abraham woke up in the tension between what God said and what his life showed him. The promise was clear, the timeline was not. And this is where many hearts begin to ache, because when God speaks, we expect movement, we expect signs, we expect progress. We can measure, but Scripture shows us something different. God often speaks in a moment and then works. Across a season, Abraham waited not weeks, but decades. And during that waiting, nothing seemed to change on the surface. His body aged. Sarah's hope wavered. Reality seemed to argue with the promise. Every single day, and yet God had not changed his mind. The silence was not cancellation. The delay was not rejection. God was still working. If you feel alone this morning, you may be standing in that exact place. The place where God has spoken to your heart, but life hasn't yet caught up. The place where you remember the promise clearly, but can't trace God's hand in the present. That space can feel unsettling. It can feel like abandonment. But Scripture gently teaches us something we often resist. Delay is often preparation. Before God fulfills a promise, he often prepares the person who will carry it. While Abraham waited, God was shaping his trust. While Joseph sat in prison, God was preparing leadership. While David hid in caves, God was forming a king who would lead with humility. None of them were forgotten. None of their waiting was wasted. And none of their stories ended in the silence. You may feel like time is working against you, like the window has closed, like the season passed without you. But hear this slowly and let it settle in your spirit. God is not finished. Your story has not reached its conclusion. This chapter may feel quiet and even painful, but this is not the end of your story. We often assume that if God were truly present, things would already be different. But presence is not proven by speed. God's faithfulness is often revealed in how he sustains us long before he delivers us. Sometimes the greatest work God does is not changing our circumstances, but strengthening our faith while we stand inside them. If you're in a season where nothing seems to be happening, it doesn't mean God is absent. It may mean God is working in places you cannot yet see. Scripture reminds us that God's promises are not fragile. They do not expire because of time. They do not fade because of delay. They do not fail because of human weakness. What God speaks, he completes. And even now, even in the quiet, even in the waiting, God is not finished. Not with your faith, not with your purpose, not with the promise that still echoes in your heart. This moment may feel like standing still, but standing still with God is not the same as being left behind. The waiting itself is part of the story, and the story is still unfolding. Faith does not live only in Scripture. It lives in ordinary mornings, in calendars filled with responsibility, in quiet decisions no one applauds. If you feel alone this morning, it may not be because something dramatic happened, but because life keeps asking more of you than you feel able to give. You go to work carrying pressure that doesn't clock out with you, expectations, deadlines, the quiet fear of not doing enough, or worse, of doing everything right and still being overlooked. You show up for your family even when your heart feels heavy. You carry responsibilities that feel constant, invisible, and deeply personal. There are people who depend on you, and days when you don't feel strong enough to depend on yourself. And somewhere in the middle of all that, decisions wait for you. Choices that feel permanent. Choices you pray over quietly, hoping God will make the path unmistakably clear. But often, the clarity doesn't come all at once. Instead, God invites you into something harder and deeper, faith that moves forward without full visibility. This is where active faith begins. Active faith is not loud, it doesn't rush. It doesn't force outcomes. Active faith wakes up even when emotions resist and says, God, I don't see the whole picture, but I trust you are still working. You may be waiting for something very specific, a breakthrough, an answer, a shift that feels long overdue. Waiting like that can quietly wear you down, not because you lack faith, but because hope requires endurance, and endurance is formed slowly. In these seasons, patience is not passive. It is a decision you make again and again. Patience is choosing not to panic when progress feels slow. Patience is resisting the urge to compare your timing with someone else's. Patience is believing that unseen work still matters. This is where gratitude becomes powerful. Not gratitude that ignores pain, but gratitude that acknowledges God's presence within it. Gratitude grounds you in the present moment. It reminds you that God is still providing breath, strength, and quiet guidance, even while you wait for bigger answers. Sometimes gratitude sounds like this: God, thank you for sustaining me even when nothing has changed yet. Because here is a truth we often forget. God works behind the scenes, even when nothing seems to change. While you fulfill responsibilities, God is shaping character. While you endure uncertainty, God is aligning timing. While you feel unnoticed, God is preparing what cannot be rushed. Invisible does not mean inactive. Just as roots grow before fruit appears, God often strengthens you internally before altering your circumstances externally. And one day, what feels delayed will reveal itself as intentional. So today, faith may look simple. It may look like doing your work with integrity, like speaking gently when you feel exhausted, like choosing trust over fear in small, quiet moments. You don't need to carry tomorrow's weight today. You only need